me is that there's a real clear connection there made between the fossil fuel industry and plastics and climate change. And I think that's riveting. So I'm happy we're all here tonight to discuss this. So my name's Teresa Ryan. I'm part of the local Sierra Club group, and we are part of the Redwood chapter, which is hosting us tonight. The Redwood chapter is part of 9 northwestern counties, and the most northern being Del Norte and Siskiyou, all the way to Solano County. I'm going to put the Redwood chapter website in the chat as well, and it was sent out in an email. I just want you to take a look at it when you have some time to see all the things that the Sierra Club is doing in Sonoma County and in the Redwood chapter, and also to see if there's some volunteer opportunities that you'd like to take advantage of. We have 3 panelists here tonight, all of them addressing different aspects of the zero waste field. They're going to share what their work is and what solutions they have come up with to address the problem of plastic pollution in the environment. So they're going to speak for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're going to have a 30-minute Q&A following that. So any questions you have for them, please post in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end of their presentations. I want to thank Sustainable Sonoma State and the Sustainability Committee at the SRJC, Recology, Sonoma Marin, Zero Waste North Bay for helping promote this. And I want to really thank all of the panelists who came here tonight and are volunteering their time so generously. Please stay muted the entire discussion. And if you don't want to be recorded, turn your video off. Okay, so our moderator tonight is Leslie Lukash. She's the Executive Director of Zero Waste Sonoma, formerly Sonoma County Waste Management Agency. Leslie's traveled all over the world presenting at conferences on zero waste. She's made her entire career, successful career in the field, and we are so happy to have her tonight because she brings a wealth of knowledge to this topic. So I'm going to turn it over to her now, and we're going to start.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa, for the introduction. And thank you for the Sierra Club Redwood chapter for hosting this event tonight. So I'm going to introduce our 3 speakers who will each speak. And then after they have finished their presentations, or while they're speaking, feel free to put any questions in the chat. And then I will be reading the chat and creating the dialogue from the chat box. So with that, I'd like to introduce our 3 speakers in order of their presentations. Our first speaker is going to be Celia Ferber. She's the Waste Zero Manager at Recology Sonoma Marin. And Celia's department manages recycling and composting programs, education and outreach, as well as landfill diversion objectives for the communities that Recology Sonoma Marin serves. Celia has been with Recology Sonoma Marin since it began operations in the North Bay in 2017, and was previously with Recology in Mountain View for 5 years. Prior to her time at Recology, she implemented plastic bag and polystyrene ordinances for the city of San Jose, as well as the city of Menlo Park. Our second speaker is going to be Will Box, and Will Box is project manager at Reusable Sonoma, and will be managing all services related to a future local compost facilities operations and product marketing. Will brought his expertise in soil science to Sonoma Compost, which served businesses and residents from 1993 to 2015 with high quality compost. He is also known for his educational outreach, giving workshops on composting, soil health, and carbon farming. And our last speaker is going to be Todd Sutton, and Todd is the owner of Waste Loose and Associates from San Francisco, but he's also resides here in Santa Rosa. He specializes in waste prevention, commercial recycling, construction and demolition, debris recycling, environmental auditing, and household hazardous waste programs. He has recently been on television on as an airfield correspondent for Discovery Channel's Green Planet TV environmental show called Greenward. And his latest national television engagement is with the History Channel for a show called Life After People. So with that, I'd like to open it up for Celia to do her presentation.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And thank you to Teresa and the Sierra Club for hosting this screening. This is such an important movie, and I'm really encouraged by the turnout tonight for this panel discussion. It's really, really cool to see how many people are on here. Again, my name is Celia Ferber, and I am the Waste Zero Manager for Recology Sonoma Marin. And Recology Sonoma Marin is the garbage, recycling, and compost collection service provider for most of Sonoma County and a sizable chunk of Marin County. So we service all of the residents and businesses and schools in the cities in Sonoma County, all of them except for Windsor and Sonoma. And then in Marin County, we service Novato and Western Marin unincorporated areas. So we have 155,000 customers in the area, and we're always trying to think of creative ways to educate the community and to inspire the community to reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. Because we service everyone, we need to cater to all different age groups, and some people are really motivated and interested, like those of us here tonight, and some folks aren't as motivated or interested, and we got to try and engage with them also. So it's always a fun challenge. So just to kind of dive into those 4 R's that I mentioned a little bit further that we're always trying to encourage people to pursue. There's the reduce. And so how can we reduce in our everyday life? We can vote with our dollar. When we're at the grocery store, we can try and buy the items that have less packaging. We can take a look at our options and say, okay, well, I know that this is actually recyclable, so I'm going to go with this. Or I know that this is actually compostable, so I'm going to buy this option. Lately, due to the pandemic, we're all ordering takeout a lot more. So just being a little bit proactive and saying, hey, I actually don't need that utensil set. I'm just going home. Sometimes they just sneak it in your bag. They don't even ask you. And so if you can just kind of remember to say, actually, no, I don't need that utensil set, or I don't need that straw. That's a great way to reduce. Reuse. So a lot of things in this day and age are not designed to last. And so again, voting with your dollar, buying things that you know can stand the test of time, kind of investing in the things that you buy so that you can reuse them over and over. And also reusable bags. I know a lot of grocery stores due to the pandemic aren't really fond of reusable bags right now, but a lot of them have stations out front where you can bag your own goods. And so just spending those extra 5 minutes to bag your own goods so that you don't take the grocery store's plastic or paper bag. That's another great way to reuse your reusable bags, and you're reducing at the same time. And then of course, recycling. And I'm going to hold up materials and kind of go over what goes where. But we do want our community, the communities that we service, to recycle correctly and to avoid wish cycling. As we saw in the story of plastic, not all of plastics are created equal. And we just want to make sure that we're only getting the materials in our recycle bin that are actually recyclable. We don't want people to feel, not everything is recyclable. So we just want people to do it properly. And then rot. And by rot, we mean compost. And so this is a big one. A lot of, most people have a recycle bin at home. They're familiar with recycling. But composting is surprisingly, not as many people are as familiar with it. It's still becoming a cultural norm over time. So that's like a really big push for us at Recology is just getting the community more familiar with composting. And whether that be you have a compost bin in your backyard, that's fantastic. If you're not able to do that, or that's not your thing, that's totally fine. You can put your compostable materials, so your food scraps, your soiled paper, your plant trimmings, you can put that in your green cart at home or at work, and we'll be happy to take that to a compost facility for you. So those are kind of the 4 R's that we really encourage. And when everyone is kind of, when all those R's are at play, we're able to reduce what we send to the landfill, which is a big part of it, big objective. So our team, our Waste Zero team at Recology Sonoma Marin also works really closely with commercial customers. And so this means like, you know, your restaurants or your retail stores or schools as well, or offices. And there are 3 state laws that have a large effect on what we do. This is going to be real dry, but keep it short. There's AB 341, AB 1826, and SB 1383. And these laws basically require that most commercial establishments have a recycle and a compost program in place. So our team, there's 9 of us, we're out there working with these accounts to implement these programs. And there's a lot of moving parts with commercial accounts. So it's always just really rewarding when you implement a program successfully and you see this restaurant taking such pride in putting their food scraps in their compost bin outside. And it's very rewarding to see that material go to a compost facility instead of the landfill, of course. Okay, so this is the part of my presentation where I'm going to hold some things up and kind of go into detail about what goes where. So I'm going to do a softball to start. We've got a plastic almond milk jug. It's PET #1 plastic, and this can go in your recycle bin just fine. This is a plastic container. Happy to take this in the recycle bin. All of our plastics, by the way, are domestic. We don't send any overseas anymore. These are all going to a facility down in Los Angeles to be processed. You have a clamshell container. I think I had dates in here. And so you can see this is clean. Clean is very, very important. And it's dry as well. And so this, you can go ahead and put this in your recycle bin. We can recycle this. This is Styrofoam. Nobody likes Styrofoam. Unfortunately, we're not able to recycle Styrofoam. So Styrofoam is best to just put that in the garbage. Lettuce was in here, I believe. And yeah, romaine lettuce. And this is a film plastic. You can bunch it up into a ball. We're not able to recycle film plastic, so this can go in your garbage bin. Have a carton here, milk carton. We also, a similar item to this would be like an aseptic container, and these are actually recyclable. Please put these in your recycle bin. We have a great market for these, and they're very popular and prevalent. We would love to recycle these for you. Okay, this is like a paper envelope, but it has bubble wrap lining in it. Because it has that bubble wrap lining, this is going to be garbage. We've got a paper towel, cardboard paper towel roll, similar to your toilet paper rolls. We're happy to take these in the recycle bin, and these will get baled with the other paperboard. And currently paper is going overseas for the most part, but it's kind of encouraging. There's some domestic mills opening up. So yes, these are recyclable. This is a cat food can. And so this is definitely recyclable. Again, we just want to make sure that it's totally clean, because we don't want those juices getting all over the nice paper and cardboard that you're putting in your recycle bin. The dreaded plastic fork. This is unfortunately not recyclable, along with plastic knives and spoons and straws. These are just too small. They fall through the cracks at our sorting facility, and there's really no market for them. So these are garbage. I would just advise, try to avoid them where possible. glass. We've got a pickle jar here. As you can see, it's very clean and it's dry. And so this is great. Clean and dry glass, happy to take that. And this actually goes to strategic materials in Fairfield to get crushed into a sand-like material, and then that'll get melted down and turned into new glass. So this gets recycled very locally. And the metal, I should have mentioned, also gets recycled locally. That goes to Alco Metals in Vallejo. And so I think that was it for the recyclables I was going to hold up. For the compost, I wanted to hold up two objects that I think sometimes people get confused on. So here we have coffee filters, a coffee filter and coffee grounds. These are mine from this morning. These are compost. These are great. Will can probably tell you and verify these are super nutritious and break down really nicely. So put those in your compost bin. And then also got a napkin. It's soiled, it's kind of wet, a little dirty. This can go in your compost bin. This breaks down really nicely. This can turn back into soil. And let's do that instead of landfilling it. So those are my items to hold up, and I'm probably short on time. I did want to mention one last thing. Recology has taken part in the Plastics Free California campaign, and we helped with an effort to collect over 623,000 signatures statewide. This effort was taken on last year, and in collaboration with a lot of people who are here tonight, definitely helped to collect signatures. And so because all those signatures were collected, there's going to be a ballot, there's going to be a measure on the ballot next year in 2022 that holds producers responsible for the plastics that they manufacture, basically. And so this ballot measure will, if voted in, it will require manufacturers to make sure that all of their single-use packaging is either truly reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2030. So that's just really cool, really, really neat things in the works. And that'll be on the ballot, the California ballot in next year. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Celia. There was a nice comment from Sunny saying she loved all the real life examples, especially the actual wet coffee grounds from today. It's a good job. Next we have Will Box presenting.
It appears I cannot put my video on. It says the host has stopped it. Okay, here goes. And there I am. Hello, my name is Will Box with Sonoma Compost and Renewable Sonoma. As Leslie said, Sonoma Compost has been providing compost services since 1993 till 2015, and Renewable Sonoma was selected to bring compost back into Sonoma County. We're still negotiating the details, but we hope that around 2023-24 that we will have a new compost facility in Sonoma County. So with the story of plastic, the first question that kind of ask is like, well, why would a composter be here with the story of plastic? We don't want plastic in our compost. Well, that's probably one of the reasons that we are here, is to get clean material. As the movie illustrated, the plastic is everywhere. It gets in our streams, it gets into the ocean, it gets into the soil, it also gets into our organics. And so we have a two-pronged approach for this year. And number one is education. It always comes down to education to get material as clean as possible. People really need to show respect for resources that we have and understand that if they contaminate a resource and it goes to a recycling facility, you lower the quality of that resource. And I don't think that people understand enough that the best way to get clean resource, and it goes for recycling as well as for composting, is that we need to start at the source and have people understand that they are the ones really responsible for getting as clean material to the recycler, to the composter, so that they can create the highest quality products. So education is the number one approach. And then, of course, within our facility, assuming that we will not get 100% virgin organic material, we need to set up a sorting line that will clean materials up. And we have a extensive system in place for our new facility to work towards a end product that meets the standard of our residents and for agriculture and for landscapers. So the movie talks a lot about reducing the amount that we produce, and that will go for the composting as well. If we get less contaminants produced, then there will be less contaminants in our organics, and we'll be able to make a better product. Our next frontier is food scraps. And as was mentioned in the early presentation, 3 bills passed. We want to get at least 75% of the organics that currently go into the landfill diverted and go to compost facilities. Unfortunately, with food scraps, that means more contaminants coming in. We have the ick factor, for instance. If we have in the refrigerator some food that is packed in a plastic wrapping and it has spoiled, people rather throw the whole package in the green can than unwrapping it and face the smell and the slippery substance that is in that bag. We really need to educate people. Number one, prevent food from being spoiled so that you don't find yourself in that situation, but that you cannot bring this here on the composter and say, you need to clean this up for me. And that is a feeling that a lot of people have. You get paid for this here, and therefore you clean it up for me. It is really important that we know that we clean these things here up at the source. So how can we work with people then to get cleaner material in the green can? A lot of people have asked for liners. Can we use liners in the kitchen pail, for instance? A lot of people like to use plastic bags. Well, we don't want to have plastic bags. It's bad for the environment. We don't want them at our facility. We'll get in a little bit into compostable plastic bags. That's a complete different story. But there are alternatives. I put a paper lining in my container, and when I go to the green can, I can put that paper directly in the green can and get that way clean organics in the green can without having to use any film plastic. So there are ways around it to do this here. What has been shown, though, is that if people can use a liner in their kitchen pails, we get 70% more diversion than we do right now. So that is really an incentive to provide something to the customer that will make the percentage of recycling of organics higher. And we have to work that out in Sonoma County, what the best solution for that will be. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Recology is doing a great job in diverting more material from the landfills, putting trucks on the road. At this point, commercial food scraps all go to Richmond, and that is a long haul for them to take food scraps out there. When we get a local facility, then they can drop it off locally, and that will suddenly then increase their capacity to bring more facilities, more material to compost facilities. So let's talk about compostable plastics, because that's really the next frontier where people are looking at, is that the solution for conventional plastic? And the movie actually spent very little time on this here. Kind of alluded like this may be a solution, but there are actually a lot of problems associated with compostable plastics. It's not as simple as it looks. Similar to how plastics came into existence, the movie showed that the plastics really was a waste product from the oil industry, and they either had to find a use for that or landfill it. And so they found that they could make plastic out of this here. Well, compostable plastics originally started because there was too much corn on the market, and they had to do something with the corn, and someone came up with the idea, oh, well, we can make a polymer that will just look like plastic, and now we have a green plastic that we can take to compost facilities, and will be liked by the public, and that's our solution. Unfortunately, this industry worked in a bubble. They worked by themselves and did the testing in the laboratory. And they did not reflect really what the conditions were at the real compost facility. And so the products that they produced really didn't decompose at a compost facility. The forks and knives that were shown earlier, they cannot be recycled. Well, if you make them out of compostable plastic, then you could take them to a compost facility, was the thought. Well, unfortunately, if you put them in a compost system, they will deform, but not decompose. They may have decomposed in the laboratory. I don't know. I was not part of that test. But when we saw it in the field, they actually did not decompose. And so that working together with the industry never happened. They felt, it's like, if we make a product that is acceptable to the public and we can sell this here, then the train has left the station and people will sign on and we can sell these materials. And indeed, we saw a tremendous upsurge of compostable plastics on the market. Well, at the same time, what happened is that the oil industry, of course, wanted to have part of this. And now they were not quite opposed to having compostable plastic being made out of corn because they would still sell fertilizer. There would be a lot of water pumping that takes energy. There was processing. So for having corn made into plastic, they still would get something out of that. However, they inserted themselves quite quickly in the compostable plastics industry because they said we can make a better compostable plastics if we actually insert some oil products in there. And so soon we did not see products anymore that were made from corn, but were a mixed material of indeed corn and oil products. And that presents a problem when we start looking at, is this material then marketable, for instance, to the organic sector of agriculture? So the industry was successful with the train has left the station. A lot of compost facilities signed on and said, well, this year is good for the environment. We have a green product out here. We get more diversion. Let's do this here. A lot of them have come back from this. In 2008, I was very outspoken, wrote a paper about the problems with compostable plastics. I think I made more enemies in a conference than I've ever made in my life. People came after me and said that I didn't see the good that came from this year, that I was too focused on the problems. A lot of these people have come back from this year and said that they wish they had the insights that I had at the time and rejected compostable plastics because they really do not contribute anything to composting except for problems. So here's the problem with compostable plastics. First of all, when we get compostable plastics in and we get also conventional plastic coming in, they look exactly the same. So if we ask our people on the sort line, take plastics out, but leave compostable plastics in, they cannot see the difference. And so they take everything out. And so the compostable plastics are sorted out now as well and go to the landfill. That is greenwashing. And I don't think we should stand for something like that. If we're going to have a compostable plastic that's going to hit the market, they need to be identified very, very clearly so that we can separate them from the real plastics. They cannot have any petrochemicals in it because if they have petrochemicals in it, they would not be allowed by the National Organics Program so that you can sell the compost to organic farmers. And that has proven to be very important to create a good market for the compost. The rate of decomposition has not met the standards of the composting for the composters. The organic material breaks down a lot faster than the compostable plastics do. And so we end up with residual plastic in the compost. So at this point, compostable plastics are really not ready for the market and will not be accepted. And I see Leslie is in my time up. I'll wrap up out here. There are alternatives. We need to look at fiber products as an alternative. But moreover, it's like if we can use more durable products and stay away from plastics, that's where the future is. And with questions, maybe we can talk a little bit more about this here. One last thing I want to say, there's another product that has a shiny gloss on like paper cups and plates. It's called a FAS. If you can't pronounce this, don't use it. This is one of them. It's found in our groundwater, in our bloodstreams, in our streams. It is in our blood. It increases our cholesterol. It can affect the immune system. It is a bad chemical that is found in lots of paper as a water-resistant layer. Luckily, these materials will be probably banned very, very soon, but it is very hard for our society to actually make products that are sustainable and do not harm to our streams and human health. And with that, I will give it back to Leslie. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Will. Yeah, and I'm not sure if people know, but as our agency, we just banned PFAS from any foodware. And so we banned it as an agency, and we're going jurisdiction to jurisdiction to revise our polystyrene foodware ban to also include now banning of PFAS, because it's a carcinogenic chemical additive into foodware to make fiber foodware more grease resistant. But there's a lot of issues with the chemicals in PFAS. So I think we're the third jurisdiction to actually ban PFAS in foodware in California. So with that, Todd Sutton.
Thanks, Leslie. It's nice to follow Will. I was thinking about the words I'm going to share with you this afternoon, and it's rather provocative at some points, and it's nice to know that Will's shaking the tree as well. And it's important that we sometimes get out of our comfort zone to address some of these environmental issues. So I've got a lot of information, and I tend to get all over the place. To remain focused, I've got some words I've written down, and then we'll get into a little more free flow after a couple pages of some words here. So I'm going to start his. So first, the challenge that humanity is facing right now is huge. The myth of we have to save the earth. Frankly, the earth doesn't need to be saved. Nature doesn't give a hoot if human beings are here or not. The planet has survived cataclysmic and catastrophic changes for millions upon millions of years. Over that time, it is widely believed 99% of all species have come and gone while the planet has remained. Saving the planet is really about saving our environment, making it safe for ourselves, our children, and the world as we know it. If more people saw the issue as one of saving themselves, we would probably see an increased motivation and commitment to actually doing so. But those words are from a man named William Rathje, and he's deceased now, but he was known as a garbologist. He investigated what is and was in our landfills. So his words are poignant in that it's not about save the planet. It's broken multiple times. It's about saving our environment, which means saving our home, us. We must expand the conversation from a single product or material and address climate change and greenhouse gas reduction, because this is truly an existential time for humans. We need to look into the mirror and to see that our biggest obstacle to all of our environmental and social justice issues is us. We are the cause of our current situation. Personally, we fail by using the word inconvenient as justification for not doing what we need to do. Publicly, we fail by allowing politicians, lobbyists, and corporate boards to routinely profit by using our planet's resources, our natural resources, and social resources. It's time for honest, tough dialogue, and that is very unpleasant and often challenged by those same politicians, lobbyists, and corporations. We must reduce our focus on recycling. We must reduce and eliminate most single-use products and think upstream using a concept of sustainable materials management. And that's one thing that I want for you to take away. If you don't understand sustainable materials management, write that down, SMM, Google it, read about it. It's important. Privately, we must take personal responsibility and live with personal integrity. What do you do when no one is watching? Publicly, once we are living privately with true integrity, then we must have extended producer responsibility on a global level. Everyone must be responsible. I mean, everyone with a capital E. Everyone must be responsible and be held accountable. We need truth in leadership and from our leaders. A sincere commitment to global environmental and social justice. What can you do about these huge challenges and issues? Always do your best. At home, at work, at school, while traveling. Just do the best you can. Be mindful, do your best. Reduce, reuse, recycle. and rot and compost to the max, as Celia said. Live with integrity. We have addressed other bad environmental issues in our past. Coal smoke pollution, mercury, lead paint and gas, DDT, to mention a few. So we have so many solutions at our disposal. We have the technology, but we don't necessarily have the technicians. This is because most of those in control of our infrastructure and technology are not making decisions based on long-term survival, our long-term survival. They're thinking on quarterly profit reports and return on investment, or ROI. We must be brave and take on the giant. Let me use plastic film as an example of how complicated our world has become. Plastic diapers. In the movie, we see just how damaging this one product is to our environment, especially in some of those lower income communities and cultures. It was just mind-boggling to see that footage. Most of us do not know it is illegal to dispose of human fecal matter in the landfill. It's illegal. The reusable cloth diaper industry has been begging for just one thing: enforce that law. Just one thing: enforce the illegal dumping of fecal matter. That would drive the reusable diaper industry to success. Plastic film is everywhere, more than ever, with Amazon including plastic film in almost every package they deliver. And the package itself is plastic film. We've seen the plastic pouches we're getting our goods in. We must stop saying this material is not recyclable and create the infrastructure to capture this material. Now that's provocative, and it sounds like I'm a plastic lover. I'm not. I care about my environment, my earth. And that goes back to a higher way of thinking, which is greenhouse gas reduction. And I'll talk more about that. I know that saying that we need to focus on recycling plastic sounds like I love it, and that we can recycle our way out of this nightmare. The point that we must acknowledge is that this material is so prevalent in our daily lives, and yet there is minimal recycling infrastructure for this single material. It's just one of many examples I could cite. We must make decisions using life cycle analysis relating to greenhouse gas emissions as the driver to our decisions, and we must allow our decisions to be based not on emotion or on product bias. Life cycle analysis results must be the measuring stick. We must look at water use, resource extraction, production, transportation energy, and greenhouse emissions. They must be measured and quantified before making important decisions. I want to just stop there, and I'm going to go to some examples to kind of correlate to this greenhouse gas reduction. And I saw a couple questions come through about, well, if plastic doesn't decompose, well, maybe these things should be banned. Well, let me give you some examples. I'm going to share my screen. And when I first saw this, it was rather, the host is disable screen sharing. Okay, so maybe the host can allow me to share my screen. Maybe.
I can't do it, Todd.
You can't do it. Okay. Well, then I'm going to wing it, and we're going to go without visuals, and I'm going to just have to verbally describe what I intend to as it relates to life cycle analysis and greenhouse gas reduction. Not everybody is aware of the fact that when organics goes to the landfill, it's one of the worst things we can do for our environment when we are using greenhouse gas emissions as the discussion point. Plastic is in our environment, as we saw in that movie, is just terrible. It's a nightmare. It's troubling for me to see. It's troubling for all of us to see if we have any relation to reality. But it's a bigger issue than just plastic. Right now, climate change is paramount. The day that I started getting ready to watch the movie, I saw something come across my smartphone about Sir David Attenborough. Some of you know him. He put out a short 2.5-minute video of basically saying we're really in trouble. He keeps saying this over and over, but he's at a heightened level saying we really need to pay attention, that he believes we can get out of this nosedive, but we need to start now. And so that's why and kind of elevate the discussion beyond just a single material type, plastic in this instance, to talking about greenhouse gas emission reduction. And I've been in the solid waste and recycling business for almost 30 years. I started teaching composting classes. I still teach composting classes, but I've also spent part of my time learning about plastic and working with the plastic industry to increase markets and increase recycling for that material. There's this concept of in the meantime. Right now, plastic is prevalent. And in the meantime, the best thing we can do is keep it out of the landfill and keep it out of the oceans, and to find markets and to add value to this material. So it's complicated. When I talk about organics, when I teach a composting class, I start by talking about the climate, and that this whole concept that, well, it's okay if I put a banana peel in my garbage cans because it's going to go to the landfill and it's going to rot. Well, in fact, that's the worst thing we can do right now, because when organic material goes to the landfill, it gets buried. And when organic material is buried and decays or rots in the absence of air, it no longer produces a little bit of carbon dioxide, it produces methane gas, which is one of the most potent greenhouse gases that we have. And we have it at control. So that banana peel becomes methane gas. And it's not just banana peels, it's that paper napkin that Celia showed you going to the landfill. It's all of organic material that should be going in the green cart, or even better, into your backyard in a composting system, and not to the landfill where it decays. So unfortunately, I'm not able to show you some images, but let me just tell you two examples that come out of a different way of thinking. There's kind of this zero waste concept, which is nothing to landfill, and that's great. We need to not waste our resources. Then there's another path, which is sustainable materials management. And in that concept, there are moments in the thinking that it's allowable to throw plastic away. Think about beef and the production of beef. Cattle production is huge in terms of its environmental footprint. Not everybody eats beef, but for those of us that do, if we put a piece of beef on a styrofoam tray and its shelf life is 7 days or 9 days, yet we can design a film plastic that allows the shelf life to go to 21 days before that meat rots. That's a good use of plastic, because we've tripled the shelf life of a product that has a huge environmental footprint. Now, at the end of that useful life, in terms of protecting that meat, that plastic film is no longer recycled. It's a complicated layer, but it is preserved something that historically would have a shorter turnaround time or rot factor. I see Leslie's here. I've got a lot to say about that in terms of organics going to landfill and shifting the discussion to climate change as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions, and not just focusing on plastic and single materials. So I'll stop right there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Todd. So I'll ask all of our presenters to show your video. We have quite a few questions going on in the chat. Let's see, I'll go back up to the top. One question is, can anyone address if the company TerraCycle is a good way to recycle plastics at home? Go ahead, Todd.
I've always been skeptical of TerraCycle. In the movie, we saw what was referred to as sachets, these multi-layer plastic products that by design protect the product, but by design are a woven mist of unrecyclable material. Now, if we collect these sachets and other complicated multi-material products and send them to somebody, what are they going to do with it? The most they can do is blend it and turn it into one other product, maybe, that product then is still not recyclable at the end of its life. So it's just, I don't buy into some of these claims that you can send these folks anything and they're going to miraculously find a market for it. I just don't buy it. I've been skeptical about that model all along.
Anybody else want to respond about TerraCycle? There's quite a bit of questions, so no pressure. Okay, next is, are the green artificial lawns or turf that we are seeing cropping up everywhere contributing to plastic pollution? Anyone want to take that one on?
So plastic pollution. So this gets to a different way of looking at that. It's life cycle analysis or life cycle assessments. So looking at that lawn, that plastic lawn, doing an LCA, it's called, you would look at the energy and materials consumption to produce that artificial turf. Okay, so it's all front loaded. You extract the petroleum, you produce it, the energy, the water, all that, and then you deliver it, and then you set it there, and it just sits there. At that point, it's no longer generating any energy, or it's not consuming it. It's all front loaded on its life cycle analysis. Now, going to a traditional turf and sod, that's a little bit different. You till it out, you put the seed down, and then in most cases, people are using fertilizers over and over and over. And unless they're using an electric lawnmower, they're using a gas lawnmower. So there's a lot of, once the real grass is installed, it's like a cash crop in the wrong way. You're spending money to maintain it. Then if you don't have, and we have to think outside the bubble of the Greater Bay Area or East-West Coast, in a lot of places, they don't have composting facilities. So if you mow your lawn and put it in a bag and throw it away, it goes to the landfill and becomes methane gas. So I say that artificial turf on a long-term life is a better product than the cash crop of mowing lawns and throwing it away to become methane gas. Will?
Yes, please. Yeah, I would tend to differ with that. Because I think number one, we should not make these astroturfs, it's like that is just producing plastic for no purpose whatsoever. It's like, yes, it may mimic a lawn, but we produce plastic, and that's the bottom line. We pollute the earth when we make that plastic. There are lawns that we can create. Blue ryegrass, I believe, is one of them. These bunch grasses take very little water, barely need to be mowed, are deep rooted, and are carbon sequesters, where we can actually take carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it in the earth. That's the route that we need to go. We cannot pave over our land. We cannot make our soils non-organic by covering over by non-breathable substances. We need to grow carbon in the soil. And so my belief is that, yes, lawns, if they are designed correctly with the right type of grass, are desirable because they are great carbon sequesters. Yes, we need to get away from the water guzzlers. We need to get away from the lawns that need a lot of fertilizer because they produce nitrous oxides, which are even more potent than methane as a greenhouse gas. So, but yes, grow in the soil, keep it covered and plant.
I agree with you, Will. My explanation was the most extreme, the traditional American grass versus this nasty plastic thing. You're absolutely right. I don't believe in lawns. I think we should be growing these blue grasses and lemon trees and tomatoes and have gardens in our front yard and be proud of it.
Great. Somebody asks a question about, can you talk about hemp plastics?
Don't have much to say. I can't, I don't have any talking points on that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with hemp plastic, probably hemp fiber products, but not necessarily hemp plastic. But I would still venture to say that if there is hemp plastic, which there probably could be, there's still going to be synthetic binding materials within that plastic. If you're calling anything that was organic at one time, their resin is used to make a plastic, they have to add a synthetic binding material, which now negates that product being organic. So it can't really go into a compost facility that makes organic compost, which most compost facilities do make organic compost. So there's that. I'm going to take one question. Let's see. Does anyone know who studies the value in carbon sequestration or species preservation of undisturbed wilderness? Does anyone know a university department that studies this?
I'm thinking of the author of Drawdown. Who's the author of Drawdown?
Yeah, it's off the tip of my tongue, but I would contact the Carbon Cycle Institute. They probably would be best to direct you to the right person. So if you Google Carbon Cycle Institute, you can email them, and I would ask that question to them.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, or who live in Sonoma County, Will and I are actually part of a carbon sequestration working group, and we're trying to determine or identify projects to sequester more carbon in our soils throughout the county.
Mhm.
Um,
But it's true that undisturbed land, I mean, it's like in drawdown, it is one of the highest rated measures that we can take is actually protecting existing biomass storage that we have already at this point. So because the destruction of existing biomass is just mind-boggling, and it's one of the highest priorities in making this planet habitable for human beings.
Great.
Could I say one quick thing? Zero Foodprint is a relatively new nonprofit organization, and they're actually studying the carbon sequestration of compost on ranches across Sonoma County. And I put the link to their website in the chat, zerofoodprint.org.
And there's another great resource called the Marin Carbon Project that's doing the same.
Yeah, and I think Paul Hawkins involved with that, right?
Paul Hawkins, yes.
Okay.
No, he's not really involved in that area, but he's the drawdown person. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I got a question here. Are all products that claim to be compostable actually compostable? For example, if a product explicitly states it can be composted, is that always true?
No.
Go ahead, Celia, expand on that.
I would say I'm greater than just compost. You can't ever really trust what the manufacturer is telling you on a product. Just because they say it's recyclable or compostable doesn't necessarily mean it's true. They're not really regulated. They can say whatever they want on their packaging. It's always important to check with your local hauler or compost facility or recycling facility to see what they accept and what they're actually able to process. For the compostable materials, like Will expanded on in his presentation, oftentimes they don't break down at commercial compost facilities and they still have plastic resins in them. And so that means that it's not a good addition to the compost product. So generally compostable plastics are not in a place, I mean, it's not to say they couldn't get there one day, but right now they're not in a place where they're truly compostable.
Yeah, and the field is extremely confusing. We can have, for instance, bio-based plastics, and they are made from plant material, but they are actually PET plastics. So they don't decompose at all. They have the same characteristics as the plastic made from petrochemical products, but they're made from plant material. Is that any better? No, it's still plastic. It's like, and it can actually not be recycled. It goes to the landfill. Then there are these products that are biodegradable. What they do, they take real plastic and put an organic binder in it. And when the organic binder decomposes, you're still left with the plastic. And then, of course, there is the compostable plastic, which would decompose over time. But the tests were really done at the time. It was something like that they would decompose in 6 months. 60% would decompose to 2 millimeters or less. Well, that means you still have compostable plastic left over in your finished product. So there is really not an acceptable standard, in my opinion, at this point, that says that you get a plastic made from plant material, compostable or not, that is acceptable.
And maybe let's elaborate on
very
this.
Confusing for the customer, because the consumer has absolutely no idea what they're buying. And they try to do the good thing. They see something that looks green and they try to do the right thing, but it is extremely difficult to wade yourself through this field.
There's another question that kind of expands on this, and Celia, this is probably more directed to you, since you allow biodegradable or compostable bags for the food, your specialty routes. So the question is, are there any 100% plant-based biodegradable bags available in this country? Maybe you can answer that, but also about how, what you do specifically for food generators.
Sure. So and again, this is just specific to Recology Sonoma Marin. We have a special route for our commercial customers that have compost service, and we allow our commercial customers only to bag their compostable materials, their food waste, their soil paper. They can bag that in a compostable bag because we find that that's kind of the best solution so that they can actually transport that material to the bin out back and we get more compostable material that way. And like Will mentioned, that compostable material for commercial customers is being taken to a compost facility in Richmond currently. And so we don't, our residential customers, we do not allow them to bag their compostable materials because those are going to different compost facilities that aren't able to handle those bags. Basically, the compost facility in Richmond has a bag breaker machine. And so they're basically ripping open those compostable bags and then composting the contents of the bags. And then the compostable bag itself is actually getting landfilled because it's not truly compostable. I'm not aware of a truly compostable plastic bag on the market at this time. Yeah.
Todd?
Yeah, a couple things to build on both of those speakers, Liz and Will and Celia. When something is screened out at the compost facility that you think you bought a quote compostable product, and most of these aren't, or a compostable bag that gets screened out that we just heard doesn't get composted, it gets taken to landfill. These items are taking 2 trips. They're doubling their greenhouse footprint. That's something that we really need to be aware of. Back to what I was saying, we need to elevate the conversation to this greenhouse gas concept. And it builds on these concepts that Celia started at the beginning. Recycle right, and then compost right. If you're not sure, don't put it in there. If you're not sure that that thing is really going to be composted, it's going to take 2 trips, one to the facility and then one to the landfill. If you don't know that it's going to really be recycled, it's going to take one to the recycling facility and then one to the landfill, doubling the trip. So the short answer is don't guess anymore. Recycle right, compost right. Next question.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say, if anybody wants to get more involved in the local Sonoma County zero waste movement, we do have a zero waste task force that meets monthly where we try and do community projects, but also discuss legislations that's happening at the state level, local level, and we look for ways to get more involved with zero waste projects. So I put my email address as my name, and please email me if you want to get more involved locally, or I guess I could have put it in the chat too. That would have been easier, right? I'll do that too. So as I do that, we'll take one more question because it is 5:30 and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Actually, since it is 5:30, why doesn't everybody give any closing thoughts that you might have? I'll start with Will since you're first on my screen.
Okay. I think probably the one and foremost thing that we need to do is a lot of education. There's a lot of confusion out there in the public in general as to, and I'll keep it to composting. It's like when it comes to what you can put in the compost bin and what you cannot when it comes to packaging material. In general, fibers are, I think, our best alternatives at this point. When it comes to compostable plastics, I would say stay away from it. Things may change over time. I'm not a person who says no necessarily. It's like it was pointed out, it's like maybe there is film plastic that will have a added value, but it needs to meet a lot of standards, and we're not ready for that yet. So I'm keeping an open mind, but at this point, I think better safe than sorry. Let's stay true to really organics. We have our hands full in actually getting clean organics to a compost facility. Let's focus on that and not make life too difficult and say, it's like, let's only put natural food products and garden products in the green compost and compost that material and make excellent products.
Great, thank you so much. Celia.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I just, please don't get too discouraged. It can be kind of overwhelming when we watch these films and they're a little depressing. There's a lot of good work that's being done, a lot of progress that's being made locally and California statewide, and maybe at the federal level now too. So try not to get too discouraged. And if you learned anything new today, just share it. Share it with your family members, share it with your neighbors. And that's how we're going to see this cultural shift over time.
Great, thank you. And Todd, closing thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for Sierra Club for pulling this together, and it's great talking with everybody today. And I think Will hit it, and so did Celia. Education. When in doubt, find out. Ask questions. Don't make assumptions on the organics thing. Just put leaves, grass, fruits, and vegetables in your cart, and everything else, nah, don't do it. Quick closing tip: line your food scraps collection bucket with a sheet of newspaper. That eliminates the whole question on compostable bags or all that. Just a sheet of newspaper. It keeps your bucket clean, and you're done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciate Sierra Club Redwood chapter hosting us today. It's great. We had over 50 people attending. So I don't know, Teresa, if you want to say any closing thoughts.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. And this is obviously an ongoing conversation. So, just find a group to belong to, or come to see the Zero Waste North Bay group that meets once a month, and email Leslie for the website for that. I just encourage you to stay energized on this. And like Celia said, don't get discouraged. That's not an option. We're doing this and we can do it. So let's just keep hacking away at the plastics and find another way to live. Thank you for coming.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Celia. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Todd.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Leslie.
It was a
Thank
pleasure.
Thank
Teresa.
you.
Take
Yeah,
care.
thank you.